The massive alien vessel hung in Earth's orbit like a dark omen, its obsidian hull reflecting the blue marble below. Admiral Quan Teho stood in the Seoul Defense Command Center, his weathered hands gripping the tactical display as the transmission began. Primitive species of the third planet. The reptilian creature's voice echoed through the chamber, its forked tongue flicking between razor-sharp teeth. I am Fleet Commander Velthak of the Hegemony. Your world has been selected for incorporation into our empire. Major Park Minesio, Earth's chief xenobiologist, watched the holographic image with clinical detachment. The alien's scales shimmered green and gold, its eyes cold and calculating. Behind it, other species stood in rigid formation, the insectoid, Klaxons, the crystalline Nexari, all bearing the mark of conquest. You will surrender 90% of your population for labor redistribution across our territories, Velthak continued. Your technology will be assimilated. Your culture will be preserved in our archives. You have 30 rotations to comply, or face complete annihilation. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Around the globe, similar scenes played out as world leaders absorbed the impossible choice. Captain Lee Dongwook of the Lunar Defense Force watched from his station on the moon, his jaw clenched as he calculated the odds. "Sir," whispered Lieutenant Kim Ji-woo, her voice barely audible. "Our weapons barely scratched their shields during the demonstration." Admiral Kwan nodded grimly. The aliens had casually disabled Earth's most advanced orbital platforms with a single energy pulse, treating humanity's greatest achievements like children's toys. The demonstration had been swift and merciless. In less than 10 minutes, the Hegemony fleet had shown that Earth's defenses were worthless against their technology. But as he looked around the room at the faces of his officers, scientists, soldiers, engineers, he saw something the aliens had missed. He saw defiance. Dr. Choi Hae-won, the chief weapons engineer, stepped forward. Her usually calm demeanor showed cracks of anger. "Admiral, we recorded everything during their demonstration. Energy signatures, the shield frequencies, the weapon patterns. If we can analyze this data." "You think we can find weaknesses?" Kwan asked. "Every system has weaknesses," she replied firmly. "Even theirs." Meanwhile, in the underground bunkers of Beijing, General Yang Seogin was already mobilizing Earth's hidden resources. The world's governments had prepared for many scenarios, but alien invasion had always seemed like science fiction. Now those emergency protocols were their only hope. Contact every research facility, every military installation, every university. He commanded his staff. "If it has scientists or engineers, I want them working on this problem. We have 30 days. Across the Pacific in the Tokyo Defense Center, Colonel Song Woojin reviewed the limited intelligence they had gathered. "The Hegemony fleet has won. 147 vessels in our solar system," he reported to his team. "Their smallest ship is twice the size of our largest battleship. Their weapons can destroy entire cities with single shots." "What about their crew?" asked Major Kim. "Hien-su. Mixed species. The reptilian Sorens seem to be in command, but they have insectoid soldiers, crystalline beings handling technical operations, and several other species we cannot identify. It appears they have conquered many worlds before ours." The weight of that information settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Earth was not the first world to face this ultimatum. The Hegemony had done this before, many times. They had it down to a science. But they had never faced humans before. In the depths of the Pacific Ocean, Captain Moon Ji-hyun commanded the experimental submarine Deep Strike. Her vessel was equipped with the most advanced stealth technology Earth possessed, and it had remained hidden during the alien demonstration. Now, it represented one of humanity's few remaining surprises. "Captain," reported her sonar operator, "we are detecting unusual acoustic signatures from the alien vessels. They appear to be using some form of underwater scanning technology." Nodded. The aliens were being thorough, mapping Earth's defenses, both above and below the surface. They wanted to ensure that no human military asset could surprise them when the time came for conquest. They were right to be careful, but they were also making assumptions. Back in Seoul, Admiral Kwan gathered his senior staff for an emergency meeting. The room was filled with the best minds Earth had to offer, but even they seemed overwhelmed by the magnitude of the challenge. "The situation is clear," Quan began. "The hegemony expects us to surrender or die. They've given us 30 days to make our choice. But I believe they have made a critical error." "What error, sir?" asked Dr. Choi. "They think those are our only two options," Quan replied. "But humans have a talent for finding third options when none seem to exist. The next 29 days would be the most crucial in human history." Scientists worked around the clock to understand alien technology. Military strategists developed new tactics based on assumptions that conventional warfare was useless. Engineers retrofitted civilian equipment for purposes their designers never imagined. And throughout it all, one truth became clear. The hegemony had indeed made an error. They had given humanity time to prepare, thinking that 30 days would only increase human despair and make surrender more likely instead. They had given humanity exactly what it needed most, a deadline to focus their greatest strength. When humans were truly threatened, they did not despair. They got angry 20-9 days later. President Yoon Soo-jin stood before the United Nations Assembly, her voice carrying across the world as she delivered humanity's response. After careful consideration of the hegemony's terms, she began. Her tone carefully modulated to sound defeated. "Earth's unified government accepts the conditions of vassalage." In the Seoul underground bunker, Dr. Choi Hae-won watched the broadcast while making final adjustments to her quantum disruptor array. The past month had been a whirlwind of reverse engineering as teams of scientists across the globe worked to understand the alien technology from the debris of their demonstration. "The surrender broadcast is going perfectly," reported engineer Park Jae-min from his station. "The hegemony fleet is relaxing their formation, just as we predicted. The deception had been carefully planned." Every word of the president's speech was designed to convince the aliens that humanity had broken under the pressure. Her shoulders sagged slightly as she spoke, and her voice carried the weight of defeat. It was a performance worthy of any award, but the stakes were far higher than any movie or play. "We understand that resistance is futile," President Yoon continued, reading from a script that had been crafted by psychologists and military strategists. "We ask only for mercy in the treatment of our people." Aboard the hegemony flagship fleet, Commander Velthok watched the broadcast with satisfaction. His scaled lips curved into what might have been a smile. "Another species breaks before superior force," he hissed to his subordinates. "Deploy the collection ships. You'll begin the harvest immediately after the ceremony." The reptilian commander had seen this scene countless times before. The pattern was always the same. First came defiance, then desperate resistance. Then the gradual realization that victory was impossible, and finally, complete surrender. Humans were following the script perfectly, but far below the surface of Earth, in hidden facilities that the hegemony's sensors could not detect. The real work was being done. Dr. Choi's quantum disruptor was just one of dozens of weapons that had been developed during the past month. Human scientists had torn apart every piece of alien debris they could find, learning the secrets of hegemony technology. "The energy patterns are stable," reported Dr. Lee Min-ho from his laboratory beneath the Pacific Ocean. "The shield disruptors are ready for deployment." "Confirmed," replied Dr. Kim Soo-young from her Arctic research station. "The frequency modulators are online. We can penetrate their defensive systems." The breakthrough had come on day 15. A young physicist named Dr. Park Hae-jin had noticed something unusual in the alien energy signatures. The hegemony shields operated on predictable frequencies, like a radio station that never changed channels. Once humans understood the pattern, they could build weapons specifically designed to bypass those defenses. Colonel Song Woo-jin reviewed the tactical displays one final time. Hidden throughout the solar system, human forces waited in converted mining ships, retrofitted cargo vessels, and hollowed-out asteroids. The aliens expected a broken species begging for mercy. Instead, they would face humanity's greatest strength, the ability to turn desperation into innovation. "Mining ship determination is in position," reported Captain Shin Yeon-ho from the asteroid belt. His vessel looked like a simple cargo hauler, but hidden within its hull were weapons that could tear through alien armor. "Freighter Hope standing by," came the voice of Captain Ann Hygen from beyond Mars. Her ship appeared to be carrying supplies for the outer colonies. But those supply containers held something far more dangerous than food and medicine. The deception went deeper than just hidden weapons. Every human vessel in the solar system had been modified, but the modifications were invisible to alien sensors. The hegemony had studied human technology during their demonstration, and they thought they understood its limitations. They were wrong. "All units report ready," came the whispered confirmation from Captain Moon Ji-Hyen aboard the disguised freighter. "Resilience. The hegemony ships are moving into ceremony formation." The ceremony was a hegemony tradition. When a species surrendered, the alien fleet would arrange itself in a specific pattern that demonstrated their power and the new subject's submission. It was a moment of triumph for the conquerors, a final humiliation for the conquered. It was also the moment when the hegemony fleet would be most vulnerable. Major Park Manesio, now serving as Earth's chief intelligence officer, monitored the alien communications from his hidden bunker. "Their guard is down," he reported. "They are treating this as a routine operation." "Routine," muttered Admiral Quanteho. "They have no idea what routine means to a species that has been preparing for war for 30 days.
The final pieces
Of the deception were falling into place. Human civilians were being evacuated to underground shelters. It's not because they were surrendering, but because they were about to turn their entire solar system into a battlefield. The aliens thought they were watching a beaten species prepare for subjugation. They were actually watching humanity prepare for the most audacious ambush in galactic history. "Signal from the hegemony flagship," reported Lieutenant Kim Ji-woo. "They are requesting permission to begin the collection process." Admiral Kwan took a deep breath. In a few minutes, the deception would end, and the real war would begin. "Send the reply," he ordered. "Tell them we are ready to comply with their demands." It was the last lie humanity would tell the hegemony. Everything that came after would be the truth. Delivered with weapons that should not have existed and tactics that defied every rule of civilized warfare. The aliens were about to learn that humans were not civilized. The first phase of the human counterattack lasted exactly 17 minutes. In that time, the hegemony lost 43 vessels and their entire command structure in the Sol system. Fleet Commander Velthak's flagship, Dominion's Edge, shuddered as human craft emerged from their hiding spots like angry wasps. The reptilian commander watched in disbelief as primitive ships, some literally held together with industrial adhesive to her through his formation using weapons that shouldn't have existed. "How are they penetrating our shields?" he hissed at. His tactical officer, the insectoid klaxon officer, clicked its mandibles nervously. "Commander, their weapons are operating on frequencies that bypass our defensive matrix. This should be impossible for a primitive species." On Earth, Dr. Choi Haewon monitored the engagement from her underground laboratory. "The quantum disruptors are working perfectly," she reported to Admiral Kwan. "Their shield harmonics are completely predictable once you understand the resonance patterns." The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships that looked like flying scrap metal were cutting through hegemony vessels that had conquered 1,000 worlds. The aliens had expected a formal surrender ceremony, but instead found themselves fighting for their lives against an enemy that refused to follow any known rules of warfare. Captain Shin Yan-ho commanded the mining vessel Iron Will, a ship that had been hauling asteroids just a month ago. Now, it bristled with weapons that human engineers had built from salvaged alien technology. "Target their engine systems," he ordered his crew. "These ships are too big to turn quickly." The Asterisk Iron Will Asterisk dove toward a hegemony cruiser, dodging energy beams that could have vaporized a city. The alien gunners had been trained to fight other military vessels, not the wild, unpredictable movements of a converted mining ship piloted by someone who had spent years navigating asteroid fields. "Direct hit on their propulsion system," reported Gunner Kim Hyeon-soo. "They are losing power." But the real surprise came from Lieutenant Commander Baek Soo-jin, leading a squadron of modified mining ships. As hegemony fighters moved to intercept, she activated the most audacious part of the human plan. All units deploy the surprise package, she commanded. What the aliens had assumed were crude human weapons were actually sophisticated delivery systems. As the mining ships broke apart under alien fire, each one released dozens of small crafts unpiloted, some automated carrying human, volunteers, and improvised weapons directly into the heart of the hegemony fleet. The sight was terrifying and beautiful. Human ships that appeared to be dying were actually transforming, splitting apart like deadly flowers to release their hidden cargo. Hundreds of tiny vessels swarmed toward the alien fleet, too small and numerous for the hegemony's massive weapons to target effectively. Sergeant Major Kim Hyonsu found himself inside a hegemony cruiser, his combat suit system struggling to maintain life support in the alien atmosphere. His entry pod had punched through the ship's hull like a bullet through paper, and now he was deep inside enemy territory with a mission that seemed impossible. Boarding teams are inside 17 enemy vessels, he reported through his system, beginning sabotage operations. Around him, other human infiltrators moved through the ship's corridors like ghosts. The aliens had never dealt with boarding actions before. Their battles were fought at long range, ship against ship, with honor and ceremony. The idea of enemies inside their own vessels was completely foreign to them. The psychological warfare protocols are working, reported Lieutenant Park Jamin from inside another hegemony ship. The crew is panicking. They are abandoning their posts. The humans had studied the alien psychology during their month of preparation. The hegemony species were used to dominance and control. When faced with chaos and unpredictability, they broke down. Human warriors who laughed as they fought, who used improvised weapons, who appeared where sensors said they couldn't be, were. Beyond their understanding, Captain Moon Jahan watched the battle from her command ship, coordinating the chaos with the precision of a conductor leading an orchestra. Team 7, there is an opening in the enemy's port flank. Team 12, cover their retreat. Team 3, target that command ship. The hegemony formation, which had been arranged for ceremony, became a trap. Their ships were too close together. Unable to maneuver without risking collision, human forces attacked from all directions, using the aliens' own formation against them. "This is impossible," Fleet Commander Velthok whispered as he watched his fleet being torn apart by an enemy. "That should have been helpless. We are the greatest military force in the galaxy. How can primitives defeat us?" His tactical officer, a crystalline Nexori, spoke with a voice like breaking glass. "Commander, they are not fighting like any species we have encountered. They are using tactics that defy logic." The answer was simple, though the aliens could not understand it. Humans were not fighting to win a battle. They were fighting to survive, and that made them infinitely more dangerous than any enemy the hegemony had faced before. Within 6 hours, the survivors of the hegemony fleet were retreating toward the outer system, their formation broken and their confidence shattered. Behind them, Earth's defenders began the real work, reverse engineering everything they could salvage and preparing for the war they had just declared. The uprising had begun. The galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the Sol System. Battle. The hegemony's core worlds faced an impossible reality. Humans were everywhere. Grand Admiral Vexmore of the Sorin High Command stood before the Imperial Council, his scaled features reflecting the emergency lighting of the war room. "The human infection has spread to 47 systems," he reported, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "They appear without warning, strike at our infrastructure, then vanish before our fleets can respond." The council chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of species, all united under hegemony rule. The crystalline Nexari flickered with anxious light patterns. Insectoid klaxons clicked their mandibles in distress. Even the mighty Bethani beings of living rock showed signs of concern in their slow, grinding movements. "How is this possible?" demanded Councillor Vexai, a Sorin female whose red scales marked her as nobility. "These humans were barely capable of space travel 6 months ago. Now they strike at targets thousands of light years from their home world." What the hegemony couldn't understand was how a species that had barely achieved interstellar travel 6 months ago was now conducting coordinated operations across thousands of light years. The answer lay in humanity's most dangerous weapon. It's their ability to inspire others. Captain Shin Yonho, crouched in the ventilation system of the hegemony's central banking facility on Nexus Prime. His team of human commandos and alien rebels, preparing for the most audacious raid in galactic history. Beside him, a klaxon named Zixthar clicked nervously with its mandibles. The human way of war is unsettling, the insectoid whispered, but effective. That's because we don't see impossible, replied Staff Sergeant Oh Minho, checking his quantum charges. We see improbable. The team was small, but diverse. 3 humans, 2 klaxons, a Bethani engineer, and surprisingly, a young Soren who had grown tired of the Empire's cruelty. They had been planning this operation for weeks, studying the facility's defenses and learning its routines. Remember, whispered Captain Shin, we are not here to destroy the building. We are here to destroy the system. The computers, the data networks, the communication links. Without these, their entire economic empire falls apart. The banking facility was the heart of the hegemony's financial system. Every trade transaction, every resource shipment, every tax payment flowed through the massive computer networks housed in this single building. It was protected by the most advanced security systems in the galaxy, but those systems were designed to stop armies, not small teams of infiltrators. Guard patrol coming, warned Zixthar, his compound eyes detecting movement in the corridor. Below, 2 Soren officers and a security drone. The team waited in perfect silence as the patrol passed beneath them. Humans had taught their alien allies the value of patience, a concept that was foreign to many species. The klaxons were naturally aggressive, the Bethani were methodical but impatient, and the Sorens were used to quick, decisive action. But humans understood that sometimes the best action was no action at all. Clear, whispered the young Soren rebel, who called himself Keth after the human concept of brotherhood. The patrol has moved to the next sector. The team dropped from the ventilation system into the main computer core. The room was vast, filled with processing units that hummed with the economic activity of 1,000 worlds. Here the wealth of entire civilizations was tracked, managed, and redistributed according to the hegemony's will. Beginning data corruption protocols, reported the Bethani engineer, whose rocky fingers interfaced directly with the alien computer systems. The human virus programs are spreading through the network. The raid that followed redefined economic warfare. While hegemony forces searched for human fleets that didn't exist, human operatives systematically dismantled the financial networks that held the empire together. Trade routes collapsed, supply lines failed, and member species began questioning why they were fighting for an empire that couldn't protect them. Transaction records are being randomized, reported Oh Minho as he planted charges on the backup systems. Their tax collection system is distributing payments to random accounts. The trade algorithms are buying and selling the same commodities at impossible prices. The beauty of the human strategy was its simplicity. They were not destroying the hegemony's economic system, or turning it against itself. Every automated transaction became a source of chaos. Every trade agreement became a liability. Every financial record became unreliable. Security alerts are flooding the system, warned Zixthar, but they cannot determine the source of the problems. The damage appears to be coming from within their own programs. Meanwhile, on the industrial world of Kethver, Colonel Ann Hyjin led a different kind of mission. Her team wasn't there to destroy, they were there to teach. In the depths of the planet's mining complexes, human advisors worked with enslaved alien workers, showing them how to turn their tools into weapons and their knowledge into power. The key to human resistance isn't our weapons, she explained, to a gathering of Bethani workers whose rocky forms towered over her. It's our refusal to accept that we can't win. The workers listened with growing amazement as humans demonstrated improvised weapons, guerrilla tactics, and most importantly, the concept of coordinated rebellion. For centuries, these beings had served the hegemony without question. For the first time, they were learning that they had a choice. Your oppressors want you to believe you are powerless, said Specialist Yoon Tae-sung, showing them how to turn mining equipment into weapons. But every empire in history has fallen the same way. When the people it oppresses remember that they outnumber their oppressors, the effect was immediate and devastating. Across hegemony space, species that had been subjugated for millennia began to rise. The hegemony's final fleet was the largest. Armada in galactic history, 10,000 vessels, carrying the combined might of 1,000 worlds. As it approached the Sol system, Grand Admiral Dexmore felt confident that humanity's brief rebellion was about to end. He was wrong. The fleet never reached Earth. Instead, it found itself trapped in the asteroid belt, surrounded by a maze of human-controlled installations that had been built from captured hegemony technology. What had once been simple mining stations now bristled with weapons that could tear apart battleships. The asteroids themselves had been hollowed out and turned into massive gun platforms. "This is impossible," muttered Dexmore as he stared at the tactical display. "These installations were not here 6 months ago. Our scouts would have detected them," Sir reported his tactical officer, a nervous klaxon whose mandibles clicked rapidly. "The installations appear to be using our own cloaking technology. They have been hidden from our sensors." But the real shock came when Admiral Kwan's voice echoed across all frequencies. "Grand Admiral Dexmore, this is Admiral Kwan of the Terran Defense Force. We accept your surrender." The reptilian commanders. Laughter was cold and bitter. "Surrender. Human. You face the might of the greatest empire in galactic history." "Your pitiful species no longer exists," Kwan interrupted. "As of 3 hours ago, the hegemony ceased to be a functional government. Agent Kim, would you care to explain?" From the Imperial Palace on the hegemony capital world, Agent Kim Seo-han's voice joined the transmission. Her Korean accent was calm and professional, as if she were discussing the weather rather than the collapse of a galactic empire. "Grand Admiral, while you were gathering your fleets, we were dismantling your empire. The central computer cores have been corrupted, the communication networks have been severed, and the automated systems that manage your member worlds have been reprogrammed." The scaled face went pale. "That is impossible. Our security systems are impenetrable." "Your security systems were designed to keep armies out," Kim replied. "Not to stop a single translator who had been working in your palace for 3 months. You never suspected that the quiet human woman who helped with your diplomatic communications was actually a trained saboteur." The truth was elegantly simple. The hegemony had grown too large to manage without massive automated systems. World in the Empire was controlled by computer networks that regulated everything from food distribution to military commands. By infiltrating these systems, human operatives had effectively decapitated the Empire without firing a shot. "The rebellion reports are flooding in," Kim continued. "Kethver system has declared independence. The Bethani homeworld has expelled all hegemony forces. The Klaxon colonies are refusing to send resources to the core worlds. You and some of your own Soren colonies are questioning their loyalty." On his flagship, Dexmore watched his communication systems light up with incoming messages. Every report brought worse news. Across the Empire, member worlds were cutting their ties with the hegemony. Some were joining the rebellion, others were simply withdrawing into isolation. But all were refusing to support the war effort. "How?" he whispered. "How did you coordinate this across such vast distances?" "We didn't coordinate it," Admiral Kwan answered. "We simply gave everyone the same information at the same time. The true history of the hegemony, the real casualty. Numbers from your conquests, the actual conditions in your labor camps. Most of your member species didn't know they were part of an empire built on slavery and genocide. The human strategy had been brilliant in its simplicity, rather than trying to defeat the hegemony militarily. They had exposed its true nature to its own citizens. Species that had served the empire for generations learned that their neighbors had been conquered, not recruited. Worlds that had contributed resources discovered that their wealth was funding the oppression of others. This is madness," Dexmore snarled. "Without the hegemony, there will be chaos. Wars between species, economic collapse, the breakdown of galactic civilization." "Maybe," Kwan admitted, "but that will be their choice. We're not interested in ruling an empire, Grand Admiral. We're interested in making sure nobody else can rule one either." The offer that followed redefined galactic politics. Humanity proposed the dissolution of the hegemony, the establishment of a galactic council based on species equality, and massive reparations for enslaved populations. Most shocking of all, they offered the hegemony's former leadership a choice: exile to a remote world where they could live in peace or trial for crimes against entire civilizations. Why? Dexmore asked, his voice barely a whisper. Why show mercy to those who would have enslaved you? Because that's what makes us human, Admiral Kwan replied. We don't fight because we enjoy it. We fight because someone has to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. Standing in the ruins of his command center, Dexmore finally understood what made humans so dangerous. They didn't just fight to win, they fought to transform. They had turned a war of conquest into a war of liberation, not just for themselves, but for an entire galaxy. I accept your terms, he said quietly. The hegemony surrenders. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Building a new galactic civilization based on equality and cooperation would be harder than destroying the old one. But for the first time in galactic history, every species would have a voice in deciding their own fate. Humanity had kept its promise. They had given the galaxy no chance to remain unchanged, so they had taken everything and made it better.